Days are slowly ticking away, and of course, if you're like me, the anticipation is building. You're becoming very anxious. But in the meantime, while we wait for launch and all the content will be dropping here at that time, I figured that it was only right to examine what all will be changing from what we've seen so far. I mean, I quite enjoyed the beta, and I'm ready to jump into the game, and if it's anything like what we had in the beta, I think I'll enjoy it, but that doesn't mean that everything will be the same. From the beta, Infinity Ward, we're taking feedback, logging issues, jotting down ideas, and today we're going to talk about the top 20 changes you can expect out of the game come launch compared to when you may have played it in the beta. A fair warning though, this list is built out of developer commentary and feedback threads that we've seen up until this point. Ashton Williams, Senior Communications Director at Infinity Ward, actually replied to me on Twitter last night to say that the discussion about the netcode and likely even more changes will be going live Thursday morning, so keep an eye out for that one. But today we're going to look at all we know so far. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare as we round into launch. We're going to have a ton of content going up on the channel, but that said, let's get started. Let's start with some weaponry talk. Let's talk about the FAMAS first here with this. In the beta, there was an issue in which there was no trigger delay in some certain instances. What you'll see in the background is some footage of this in which it's a full auto weapon. The FAMAS, if you guys played around with it at all in the beta, you know that it can one burst. It has the one burst potential, that being if you're accurate and can land all your shots, but even if you don't, if you had this happen where you could exploit it to be fully auto, well then your enemy stood absolutely no chance. So naturally that was something that was fixed out. The trigger delay is being added here for the game come launch. Then after that, we end up seeing that the AK-47 was a weapon that a lot of players were really looking forward to using in the beta, but it really wasn't as great as people expected. Because of its recoil, it wasn't the greatest at range, but it also wasn't your best choice close quarters, though it could shred. It got outclassed by other weapons, to which Joe Seacott, the co-design director of multiplayer at Infinity Ward, actually ended up saying, give it a try at release. It's gotten some love, indicating that there is a buff for the AK-47, which should make it a more viable option for most engagements in terms of that rifle category. So that's something that, depending on where it may even be situated in terms of weapon unlock, it might be way better than we anticipate. So that's something to consider as well. Jumping over into some general gameplay adjustments, the next thing we want to talk about is some lighting and exposure in certain areas. This was addressed in the overall thanks for playing thread that Infinity Ward ended up posting, in which they noted a bunch of community feedback from throughout the beta. Now, the one big one that of course I think that everybody had an issue with was the vents on Gunrunner. Whenever you ended up going in there, it was almost pitch black if you looked in, and it often didn't even regulate itself out to whenever you went in there that it brightened up at all. So that was something that players had a lot of issue with. There are other locations throughout various other maps that had the same sort of situation, and that's being taken a look at. And presumably by launch, we can see some of these even being brightened up, or that exposure naturally adjusting to when the player may encounter those certain locations. I think admittedly, I did see some leaks over on Reddit where somebody talked about this, and they had an early copy and they showcased that it in fact was fixed. So we'll see just how much of that come launch was fixed, but that's something that's a great thing to note as well. Another thing general gameplay wise comes down to Ground War, my own personal favorite out of the beta, but one glaring issue with Ground War was that pesky under the map glitch. Personally, I had no idea how to get into it. I didn't really care to look into it, but I ended up seeing that basically every match there was at least one player that would go under that map, not be able to be killed by players, and they'd be able to rack up a bunch of kill streaks. Not gonna lie, the one absolute karma justice thing that I saw out of the beta was someone was on a 29 kill streak under the map, and then they ended up, I guess, hitting that one launch spot, and it threw them even further under the map, which of course, if you know, that kills you. So they died one off in that glitch spot, which made me so happy, not gonna lie, but that's something that has been addressed by Infinity Ward and of course will be fixed out come launch, which is absolutely fantastic. Talking Ground War a little bit further, some spawn logic in particular with the map that we ended up seeing in the beta of Karst River Quarry. That's gonna be something that a lot of spawn points in that map in particular are definitely adjusted. Some of the logic even being adjusted, because I know that I experienced it, I saw a bunch of clips of it, but sometimes if say a player was on a catwalk or a player that you were spawning on was on a roof, you'd spawn with them but then fall off the roof to your death, so you literally spawn in and die. That stuff naturally shouldn't happen, and of course is going to be fixed out here with this, and so that, and among other spawn locations where you can watch players spawn, those should be fixed out for launch. Talking spawns a little bit further, other maps aren't off the hook. Other maps didn't have the greatest spawn points nor the best spawn logic, and those are of course being evaluated as well. This has been confirmed a couple of times from various locations and various developers that they're taking a look at this and they're going to be hopefully reassessing the situation, making it a little bit better so that come launch, you won't have as many issues where maybe you get stuck in a spawn where players could either be invading the spawn points or they're just sitting far enough back that you're still spawning there. One big one that I had was on Cave. The one back plateau, I kept spawning there even though there were players right above me in the chicken pen, and then of course overlooking it at that stairwell, looking down that line of sight, just turning the corner. So that sort of stuff happened all the time. That should hopefully be fixed out with some spawn logic adjustment overall. Next up, we'll talk about staying with the party after your match. This is an issue that was in the beta and was there from day one, if I'm not mistaken, of the beta. They said it was going to be fixed out during the beta, but I'm pretty sure that I still had that issue even up until the final day of that beta. This was an issue that if you were in a party, you join a match, play the game, and then when you came back, it wouldn't find you another match, meaning that you had to break up your party before then rejoining to find another match. It wasn't intentional and persisted throughout the beta, but should be fixed out for the full game and full launch. Additionally, another little side note is that you won't be thrown into different lobbies every single match in the full launch, if I remember seeing the feedback correctly, because that was apparently something you got tossed into a new lobby each time. It was apparently a server-side thing that not only was intended to put the player back into the game as fast as possible so that Infinity Ward could get as much feedback as possible, but also was a server thing to immediately test the background management of it. So that's something that, of course, you shouldn't be seeing that either as well. But next thing we want to talk about being fixed is that of the VTOL. Probably one of my favorite streaks, if I'm honest with you, here out of the beta, just because it was something that was obtainable, but also did some damage. But it did so much damage that even in the beta, you would die to it through multiple layers of cover. I noticed that the most in Ground War, where I would die to it many times off of streaks, but you could die to it through multiple layers of cover. I'm talking, I'd be on, say, bottom B, where the flag actually is. There's a catwalk above you where there's an upper floor, and there's a roof above that even, and I'd die through it through all of that. So it definitely had some insane super tracking powers, but that's something that's apparently been fixed out as well when mentioned by the developers. The two next things we'll talk about are actually features coming into the game and not necessarily features from the beta that were changed, but were things that were from the beta feedback that we had given is something that prompted both of these to be introduced. The first of these apparently is, from what I saw on Reddit, again, this is something that is a little bit of a leak, is that apparently there's the option for a connection meter to come in game. That's been something that's kind of missed out on in recent years, or if it's been there, it's been very strangely hidden in the back end of settings, but that should be something that hopefully can let players know about their connection, hopefully more accurately than in recent years. But then also apparently there's going to be cross-play party chat at some point, probably something that in-game you'll be able to join a party up on this, because naturally you can't join a party on Xbox if you're on PlayStation 4 and vice versa, and of course PC has all sorts of different chat clients that players use. But Joel Emsley ended up saying that this is going to be something that you'll be able to do, so I'd imagine there's an in-application party chat system, so that'll be really interesting as well to see how that works out, but keep an eye out for that. Then, talking about some more technical things, a lot of the rest of this stuff is technical, so apologies if it gets a little bit boring, but it's stuff that will be changing no less. One thing that players probably loved out of the alpha was the attention to detail and the weaponry, including that of the gun smoke and the weapon audio. Definitely added a little bit more flair to it with the gun smoke and the animations there, but also the audio was booming. Apparently there was a bug in the beta that didn't let this come to pass entirely as it should have, where gun smoke was missing, weapon audio was kind of bugged out, and didn't really sound as thick and as boomy as it did in the alpha. That was something that was just a bug for the beta, but is fixed out for launch. After that, we'll end up seeing that there are some issues with ADS and crouch and prone animations on PC being something that have been fixed out. The one thing that we talked about a lot whenever this happened in the beta was that you definitely noticed this if somebody went to drop shot. Instead of having that little smooth transition where going from standing to dropping onto the ground, you'd end up having to go through into a crouch and then to prone on the ground. Instead, it was all in one single animation. One frame, you're above, you're standing, one frame, you're on the ground. So naturally, that would throw off a ton of people's aim and be something that if you knew how to exploit that, it'd be a definitive advantage. That's apparently been fixed out. Same with some ADS animations. It's been smoothed out, so it isn't as much an issue now. Then after that, we end up seeing the recon drone had an issue where I had no idea how to produce this, so I'm not going to pretend like I do, but ever so often you could end up encountering the fact that the recon drone UI would glitch out and then stay on the player's screen even after they exited that recon drone. So that's something that, of course, definitely was a huge issue if you're trying to play the game after that, but it's been fixed out for launch as well. Then additionally, we'll see that things like the Juggernaut suit is a little bit ironed out here for the full launch of the game, not necessarily in terms of the damage it can take, the damage it can inflict, but instead the fact that you can get it at all. And I mean this by the fact that whenever the beta finally reached its max level cap, you ended up getting the ability to play around with the Juggernaut. But on rare occasions, though, truth be told, I saw it a lot, so how rare it actually was, your guess is as good as mine, but the Juggernaut suit would be able to be earned, but not be able to spawn in. It just wouldn't come to the player. So that's something, of course, is a huge streak, and you wanted to get it, so it was a big issue when it didn't happen. That's been fixed out for the launch as well. Another thing technically is coming down to different open railings and towers. Whereas on some things you could see through it, like a railing, you could see that there are the metal bars, but you can see through those very clearly. Some shots in the game wouldn't actually register through those open areas. It would just act as a regular sheet of metal and it would completely block any shot. Naturally, that's not supposed to happen. If it's an open area, it's supposed to be shot through, so that'll be fixed out for the full launch of the game as well. Audio and technical wise, we end up seeing that the M13 had a little bit of a bug where if it was suppressed, every so often it would have the same audio as it would without the suppressor, meaning that you'd show up on minimaps and everything like that, and also your position would be given away audibly because of that audio coming from your weapon, whereas it wasn't silenced. Other audio bugs that will be fixed out for this include where players would only hear vehicles, weapons, or no audio at all. Personally, I didn't experience this at all, but I had seen a couple of Reddit threads about it where players were saying the only things they could hear in the game were vehicles or weapons, or again, sometimes not even anything at all. That's been fixed out for launch as well. Then we'll end up seeing for the PC players some FOV slider reverts and other PC settings resetting after each match. That's going to be changed out and of course fixed out so that doesn't happen whenever you come to the launch of the game. That, while nothing too game breaking per se, was definitely a major irritant and inconvenience. So nice to see that that will be fixed out as well. The final two things here at this come down to, firstly, well, the doors in the game. Door behavior was certainly something that created some memes. My personal favorite was that of whenever I was taking the game super stealthy and then Zach, or Immortal, ended up jumping into an area that I was about to stealthily clear, all Leroy Jenkins style. But the door behavior is something that is going to be adjusted here. They didn't really say exactly how, but also the visibility issue is something that's going to be fixed out for launch, being that you could see names through doors, which naturally would give away if somebody's there, so it's not supposed to happen. That's fixed out for launch. Then the final thing we'll talk about is that of a couple of cyber attack bugs here at this, where in cyber attack in particular, you'd be 1, unable to defuse the bomb, and then 2, unable to pick up a weapon after being revived. So you'd go down, your teammate would revive you thinking you're back in the game, but you wouldn't have a weapon in your hands and you couldn't do anything about it. So that was something that was a rare bug as well, but that is going to be changed for launch also. Overall, those are 20 of the top changes here come the beta to launch, the differences you'll be seeing from then to now, and what we'll be experiencing in just a few short days. So that said, that's where we're going to wrap it up. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you guys think here of this? Is there any in particular that you guys are really looking forward to a change out of this? Do you guys think I missed any? And if so, let me know which changes you saw that maybe I didn't. Whatever it is though, feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare. We're going to be killing it in the coming days here, so if you guys are interested in any of that, do be sure to hit the subscribe button. You guys also follow me over on Twitter and Instagram. Those are the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. That said, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.